in H-Town. Thank you for tuning in to Fox Files Cold and Unsolved, excuse me, which is my show where I highlight the many cold case murders that are here in Houston, Texas, through my segment of My Beautiful Souls. And then I will move on over to Dear Sister, a letter to let you know that you are not forgotten. And that's my segment where I highlight the many rapes, murders, kidnapping, and our missing sisters. I'm Cass, H-Town's Army brat. Let's get at it. Let's get at it. So, welcome back to the show. If you are new to the show, please like, subscribe to the channel, like the show, and share the video because this is an informative show. If you don't know, I'm an informative show. I like to get information out there about certain topics and certain situations that interest the many, you know. And a lot of times it is the fact that a lot of situations are not known to the public because of lack of resources, lack of interest, and just lack, you know. So that is what I'm here for. Cass, H-Town's Army brat here with Fox Files Cold and Unsolved. So again, as I say, if you don't know, I am an informative show where I will give you information and you do with it what you please. So with that being said, I like to always start off with like a did you know type of thing, like something that maybe you knew but you might not know you know, or something that you didn't know but you needed to know, so now you do know. So did you know is, like I say, information. It's a little information that I like to give out. So we're here H-Town, we always like to talk about uh, the crimes. We like to talk about the ratio of where you're located and what's going on in your area. But did you know that excuse me, when it comes to being able to locate you or being able to locate a certain individual, not only does it not only do we rely on where you are from, of course, but we also rely on what is called deoxyribonucleic deoxyribonucleic acid. Try that. It's the nucleic acid that's containing the genetic information for cell growth, division, and function. So I spoke upon this a few episodes ago when it came to using the DNA to solve a case, you know. But a lot of times they need to use the DNA to solve the cases. But let's go a little bit further and let's talk about using the DNA to locate a person. You know, we're using the genetic data that this person creates, that is their direct connection to themselves, nobody else. So we're using these objects, which is the skin cells, the blood, the hair, and the saliva, and we're putting it in the database, the APHIS database, or NAMIS, which is the National Database for Missing Persons, or any other database in the system that you can say, well, let's see if we can use these steps to locate and identify said person, because we found this person. They have not they have not been reported missing. You know, every characteristic that we found on this person does not match anything in our system. So how about we use this information to locate this person, right? And that's what they started doing, using these processes to find out who you are, because there's a lot of missing people out there and a lot of unidentified people out there. And until we can get the necessary people that will work these cases, because it's not like you don't have the tools that you need. We just need the people that's going to sit down and get up and work these cases. Once they get in place and pay attention to the DNA, pay attention to what is being found in locations, what is being found on certain people, you know, even if it is just a skeleton that is found, you know, hopefully there's hair follicles, and hopefully there's still a little bit of blood. There are things that could be located, to help us find who this person is. And we need the public to stand up and like think, think, do you have a distant memory? You know what I'm saying? Of something that could have happened to somebody in your family. But if you watch my shows, you know me, Cass, she digresses. So I'm moving ahead of myself, right? So that was my did you know? Did you know that the deoxyribonucleic acid that is in our that makes us us can also be used to help locate who you are, where you come from, and so on and so forth. Even if it's not just to directly find out who you are, there are ways they can find out who a relative is, who your father is, who your mother is, your sister, your brother, your cousin, because there's a lot of DNA Ancestry.com and 23andMe, and a lot of these resources where you go out and find out where you come from. So you putting your information in that database. A lot of people, hate to say it, have gone to prison, and that information is in the database. Some of the people might have gone to the military. The information is in the database. So we can find out who these unidentified people are if we have identifying markers, like I said, such as skin cells, blood, hair, and saliva. We can find out who these persons are just by entering their genetic code into the system, to where you can find out who, where, and when, pretty much, right? And that's the goal. That's the goal. We just want to know who you are, where you come from, and then we can dig into what happened to you. Then and only then can we dig into what happened to you. We can't find out what happened until we know who you are, because we don't even know who your associates are. And you know what I'm saying. So with that being said, that is my Did You Know segment portion. It's not a segment, just a little portion, a little snippet. I like to give a little, like I say, a little informative information out, for you out there, just in case you do have somebody in your family or a loved one that has gone missing, and you want to find out, if your person has been found and you don't know. I'm not going to say if your person is still alive. I'm going to say if your person has been found and you don't know. So there are ways to find this out, and there are ways, so there it is. Did you know DNA can help you find your lost relative? Give a sample, let them put it in the system. And then they can find your lost relative if your lost relative is in their system, right? Right. That's awesome. Good news. Good news. And I love good news. As I move on and on and on, it's time for me to get into my beautiful souls. And my beautiful souls is, like I said, the segment where I would speak on the cold cases that are here in Houston. And this segment holds dear to my heart because I'm a native Houstonian from Houston. Wasn't raised here from adolescent years because I'm an Army brat, born and raised, in the military, but been back home since 12. Anyway, not about me. The energy in my city needs to calm down some. A lot of these cases that are unsolved and are still cold need to be brought back to the light so they can go ahead and get hot and solved. That's what we need to start calling things. Get them hot and solved instead of cold and unsolved, because that's the tragedy of the situation. The stuff is still cold and it's unsolved. So we want to try to get that information out there to you, so maybe you can think back to your very first time. No, think back to maybe if something you can remember or recall in your family, or pardon me, your grandmother spoke of a cousin or a sister or somebody that she might remember that just came up missing. Anything in their case is cold. You know what I'm saying? Something might trigger. If you are new to my show, you will know you don't know my saying, but if you are not new, you know my saying. How do you know what you know until you say what you know, right? You never know what you can get out of your head until you start talking, or even journaling and writing it down. Go through your journals, go through your grandma journals, you know what I'm saying, your auntie's journals, or somebody who has, you know what I'm saying, has untimely met their demise. You know what I mean? So that brings me into my beautiful soul today, y'all. And my beautiful soul today is Miss Young, Kristen Wilson. Kristen Wilson, y'all. Attended at the let me cut that down. Excuse me, y'all. At the tender age of 29, Kristen Wilson had her life figured out. She was living the life she wanted, or so she thought. Or so she thought. Having a loving family and caring friends, it is truly baffling to them that how on that Thanksgiving Day, November 27th, 1996, you gotta get used to saying 1996, Kristen did not show up for dinner. So they're confused, like, wait a minute, why is she not here yet? So she wasn't answering the phone, and she was not returning their phone calls, nor was she like replying to their messages. And at 1996, we didn't do cell phones then. It was more like pagers. So 9 times out of 10, 29-year-old Kristen had a pager here in Houston, Texas. Excuse me. I was 17 years old at this time here in Houston, Texas, and I had a pager. So yeah, I'm quite sure she did, but she wasn't responding to anything. So her parents decided to just go over her house and check on her. Strangely, when they got to her front door, her door was unlocked. So they cautiously opened the door and they walked inside of the first floor apartment. And as Barbara Wilson, which is her mother, walked down the hallway, her father, Bob, opens the door to her bedroom and immediately becomes hysterical, instantly screaming and hollering. Kristen is laying down on the floor. She's on her back and she's nude from waist down. Her clothes were pulled up her body, right? She had defensive wounds on her hands and on her body, so this meant that she fought off her attacker. She also had a few broken fingernails, which possibly has the DNA, right? Skin cells, blood, and hair of the attacker. So underneath them, so they were able to get that information logged in because it's 1996 and DNA is not that popular back then. It's not that easy to detect. It's a little bit more difficult, right? So they kept on file, on hand, which was great. But they said that it's possible that she was sexually assaulted. And the reason why I say possible is because when they found her laid down, her legs were closed and crossed at the ankle, right? Even though she'd been naked, her legs were closed and crossed at the ankles, and her hands were placed in front of her on her lap. So that led one of the detectives, Detective Richard Rodriguez, to believe that she wasn't sexually assaulted because the majority of the cases that he does investigate that involves a sexually assaulted victim, they're not laid out in that position. However, a medical examiner disagrees. That medical examiner believed that she was sexually assaulted. So right now, as of now, I don't know if they didn't find anything on the rape kit and it was inconclusive, because I know they performed one, but it doesn't state, whether or not it's what it is, or what, if she had been or not. So that part is unclear about the rape. But what is clear is that while Kristen Wilson was at the grocery store making groceries for Thanksgiving dinner, so she could cook whatever meal she was to cook, the killer reached through the cat door that she had in her house that's close to the window. The cat doors are up, dog doors are down. So this person, excuse me, was able to sneak their hand through there and some kind of way get the screen loose, take the screen down, climb through the window. They then cut the phone cord and unscrewed all of the light bulbs so that the house can remain dark when she flipped the switch, and then she can remain unreachable when anybody tried to call her. That's why her family could not get in touch with her. Unfortunately, there are no witnesses and no camera evidence at this point. So her case is cold and unsolved. So it's time to heat it up and solve it, right? Let's heat it up and solve it. So Kristen has a nephew. Him and his grandmother, Barbara, were, he decided to start looking back into this case. And he and his grandmother, Barbara, were able to go in, her documents and, all her belongings and come across her diary. And they got some information on it, you know what I'm saying? But it doesn't give them any definite ideas of who could have been this person that done it to her. Now, they had suspicion that it was her first husband, because in her diary, she talked about him being drunk and, a few things about the abuse or whatnot. But they had been divorced for 3 years before this. And then there's another guy in her life, but he was, it couldn't have been him. And then there was a third guy that was like a best friend of hers for years. He even knew the relationship between Kristen and her husband. And they ended up trying to get together, but it didn't work out, but they were still good friends. So they ended up interviewing all 3 of these guys, and these guys willingly gave up their DNA to be tested. And of course, they were all excluded. Everybody, nobody was, the one. So there is Courtney Fisher from ABC 13 has a show called Unsolved, and it comes on Hulu. So this show airs on Hulu. Kristen Wilson, Unsolved, Kristen Wilson, and it talks further about everything in this case. But as of now, her murder is still cold and unsolved. So if you have any questions about anything about this case, or if you have any information about this case in any form or fashion, if you can remember seeing anybody run off from the apartments that day, if you can remember hearing it on the news and seeing a car, or your friend was in a panic or something around that time, please do not hesitate to reach out to the Houston Cold Case Squad at 713-308-3618 or 713-222-TIPS if you want to stay anonymous. Just to let you know, there is a up to $6,000 reward. Minimum is 3, maximum of $6,000 reward for any information leading up to an arrest in this case. So if you are like a lot of people that I know, and myself sometimes, and I'm not interested in talking to the man, don't want the man to know nothing about me, my business, my face, my name, no nothing, my voice, no nothing, please do not hesitate to reach out to your girl at fancy7production@gmail.com. Put in the subject bar Foxxx Files, and I will most definitely email you back, and we can get on the case and get whatever questions you may have, and something that you might want to get out. We can most definitely get into it, because I really do want to talk to you. I really do want to get your story out there. I forgot to give you the headline. The headline is My Beautiful Soul, Kristen Wilson. Thanksgiving takes away. Because Thanksgiving took away. Thanksgiving takes away. Right. So now that takes us into, reach out to your girl, Cass at fancy7production subject Foxxx Files, right? All right, so this is going to take us into our next segment, which I hold dear to my heart, because this is the segment that goes unrecognized, the segment that goes unnoticed, one of the biggest disparities in America is the lack of knowledge of Black girls in trouble. So when I do my beautiful sister, dot, 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 a letter to let you know that you are not forgotten, entire title, dear sister, dot, 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 a letter to let you know you're not forgotten. That is to let it be known that, you know, even if your story has been solved, or even and we'll let you know that we have not forgotten your case. We're going to always remember you because you were loved, you are loved, and you were snatched. And if your case has not been solved, of course, we're bringing it up so we can go ahead and get information out there, informative, so we can get information out there. Because maybe somebody knows something. Because, like I said, what do I say, ladies and gentlemen? How do you know what you know until you say what you know? Exactly. Exactly. So, my dear sister today, right now, I'm gonna do two today, y'all. So this first one right here, I'm going to do is sweet Shamonica Brown. Sweet Shamonica Brown. My headline reads, "You know who did it, but why try?" Question mark by Cass saying, Shamonica Brown, a precious 8-year-old first grader at the Heaven Ridge Elementary School, never returned home after playing with her friends. On September the 18th, 1992, while playing at the playground just blocks from her home, Shamonica Brown disappeared. She was last seen near her home at 12th and Ansley Street in Saginaw, Michigan. For days, the police and the community searched for this precious child, but to no avail. They searched abandoned houses, abandoned buildings. They even searched dog houses looking for this baby, and nothing. Just up and disappeared. Can't find her. Where is she? Right? That is until 4 days later, on September the 22nd, 1992. September the 22nd, 1992. That's my 13th birthday, y'all. The day I'm turning 13 is they finding this 8-year-old baby. When the officers came across her precious body in the planter behind the bushes on the steps of a former Holy Catholic Church on 732nd South and 13th Street in Saginaw, Michigan, right? So this is where they find her, in the planter on the church porch. So I guess the person who did this is trying to atone for their mistake by at least putting the baby at the church. I guess they felt like they were doing the right thing. We put the baby at the church. So right? Shamonica had been strangled to death. Her hair was soaked in some type of motor oil, and she also had paint chippings and some solder on her, so, like paint and whatever solder is. I guess whatever it is. I'm not finna fit it on her body. So okay. Ultimately, 2 people were identified as the suspects, as the suspects of the murder by 75 different people from FBI, from St. Louis PD, from the state patrol. 75 different people knew that these 2 individuals were the ones who did this, but yet no charges were brought against these guys because they said they didn't have enough evidence. In a 2003 interview with Saginaw News, the former Saginaw police detective Roy Walton says to the people, "We have not enough evidence to bring murder charges and rape charges up on the 2 guys that we know did this to this girl." Okay. The police concluded that Shamonica Brown was killed at a 4-unit apartment at 1902 Ansel Street, where the two suspects lived. Right. 2 years after the murder, a neighbor finally comes forward and say that they saw Shamonica walking hand in hand with one of the guys who was suspected to be the killer. But they didn't come forward because they were in fear of their life. So my question goes to the police. Are they in fear of their life because because the person's going to retaliate? That's one. And two, why are they in fear of their life if they're coming to the police to tell the police this? Why can't you protect the witnesses? I thought that was part of the plan. Protect the witnesses, right? Something going wrong here. So they came back 2 years later and states that, okay, yeah, we seen these two. I seen this baby with one of these guys, right? But 3 months after Shamonica's murder, one of the guys who was accused, he passes away. They don't say how, but they do say that he was a 42-year-old man who had been convicted of sex crimes in the past, right? The other one, they gave the nickname Jack. They say he died in a Saginaw prison in 2003, but he had served a prison sentence for manslaughter and for breaking and entering back in Alabama in the 70s. So he had a criminal record for breaking and entering and manslaughter, and the other guy had a criminal record for sex crimes. You got witnesses stating that you see this baby with this guy, but you don't get the witness till 2 years later. But before you get the witness, you got people telling you that these guys, you have your 75 people know that it's this guy's, and you still didn't do nothing about it because why? Try. Why try? You're a black girl. Who cares? It's 1980. What was it? 1992. Who cares? Right? So in the late 1990s, Jack was sentenced to federal prison for being a felon with a firearm. So he ended up going to prison not too long after this anyway. So shortly after Shamonica's murder, one of them died. And then shortly after that, the other one go to prison and he ended up dying in prison. So Jack was favored by one of the law enforcement to be the killer, while the prosecutor favored the other guy to be the killer. So it was kind of a toss up in the air who they really thought was the person who did it. But they do know both of them were in control of what happened to this baby. And that is where the tragedy is. You know what it is. You know what happened, but you're not going to say anything. So, therefore, poor baby Shamonica Brown's case is still unsolved. And it is cold because nobody has been charged. Nobody has been brought to justice. So I say to you, and I implore you, that if you know anything, have heard anything, can remember seeing anything, if you're one of them kids on the playground back on Ansley Street in Saginaw, Michigan, September 18, 1992, if you can remember something. These two guys are already gone, right? But at least let the family have peace. Let baby Shamonica have closure and peace so she can go on. So if you know anything, please reach out to the Saginaw Police Department, 989-759-1289, or their tip line, 800-422-5245. And again, if you, like a lot of people I know, don't want to talk to the man, don't want to be in your business, know nothing about you, please feel free to reach out to your girl, Cass Sand, Sand7production@gmail.com, in the subject bar, Foxxx Files. And I will definitely reach back out to you. Right. So yes, guys, that was dear sister ... Shamonica Brown. Sweet baby Shamonica Brown. Snatched away. Gone too soon. Taken too soon. So, dear Shamonica Brown, my sister, this letter is to let you know that you are not forgotten. Right? So now we're going to go into the second one. I want to do two today. I'm trying to get through them today. And my second one, this is one I really want to do now because this one's kind of, something else. So here we go. This dear sister ... a letter to let you know that you are not forgotten is for our dear St. Louis Jane Doe, right? So, after the story is the headline is St. Louis Jane Doe, but is she really? Question mark. Okay. Afternoon, February 28, 1983. A pair of teenagers were driving along when all of a sudden their car breaks down in front of an abandoned apartment building, 24, 24 unit red brick building. So they decide to go inside to see if they can find some tools and some things to help them fix their car. Nothing on the first floor. Don't want to go upstairs, so they go down. One of them takes out his lighter, strikes the lighter, and then they see a dead body just laying there. Haul ass. Excuse me. Take off. Burn off. They're gone. And they contact the police. This is 1983. Of course, cell phones. What are you talking about? So they had to go to the payphone, wherever they went, contact the police. So the police get there, they're able to do a better job and lighten up the area. So when they light up the area, what they find is a gruesome sight. You know, it's an African American female who is found naked from the waist down, and she is headless. Okay. Okay. Bound with her hands behind her back, wearing a long sleeve yellow sweater. She had red fingernail polish on her fingernails. Okay. When the medical examiner is called out to access and retrieve the remains, this is how it is described by the medical examiner. She was chest down. This is the building. She was chest down with her hands bound behind her back with a red and white nylon rope. She was dressed in only a long sleeve yellow sweater. She had red fingernail polish on her fingernails. It isn't until they turn this body over when they realize that it's in fact a young girl that has been tied up. At first, they thought it was a sex worker, you know, the wrong John. But then when they turned the body over, they seen that she hadn't even reached puberty yet, meaning no signs of growing yet in any area of her life. You know what I'm saying? So they deemed her to be between the ages 8 and 11 years old. You know, she was pre-pubescent, y'all. Pre-pubescent, y'all. And there was very little blood found at the scene. So they knew that she was not murdered there. You know, they did a 16-block radius search for her head, and they could not find her head. Her head had been cut clean off by a serrated blade, so sliced off. And her body was drained of all its blood before being abandoned in this horrible basement. In the horrible basement of this brick. Right? There are no identifying marks on the body, such as scars, tattoos, or anything like that to help them find out this headless person. Okay. But the scientists at the Missouri Botanical Gardens, they tested the bulb around the scarring of her neck, the wound in her neck, and they concluded that she had been dead approximately 5 days before she was found. Okay. Okay. All the investigators had to go on was the fact that this young black female was between ages of 8 and 11. She stood 4 feet 10 inches tall and weighed 60 to 70 pounds. See, these stories are real stories, guys. Right? Like for real situations that literally really happen to people. And to sit back and allow us and allow our kids to literally take advantage of life itself, Shamonica Brown, 8 snuffed out. Then you have Jane Doe, who is headless. Headless. Who can chop off the head of a child? Right? The detectives reached out to the local school districts to see if they had any missing students that reported missing. And to their surprise, all of the students matching this baby's description were accounted for. Okay? So we're not missing any young black girls. You know what I mean? So that's that. So this gave the police cause to figure out where she might come from. No one had ever claimed her. She was then buried at the Washington Cemetery, the Washington Park Cemetery in Berkeley on December the 2nd, 1983. The only people in attendance were the ones who were there working on her body. They were the only people there to watch this baby at least get some kind of proper send off. In so many words, because it's only a body, not the complete child. 4 months after the funeral, the investigators searched and searched and searched for answers. 4 months after the funeral, investigators searched and searched and searched for answers. They have even gone as far as to seeing a psychic medium to perform a seance, right? And the results of the seance was that this baby's head was on a boat in the Gulf of Mexico. That's what the psychic medium said, that the baby's head was in a boat in the Gulf of Mexico, but the head was never found there. So in the mid-90s, they went on a national television show with a sweater and with a rope, hoping someone could recognize it. The psychic had the rope and did the reading or whatever, and claimed to have gotten some kind of impression from the items, which led to nothing. The sweater and the rope led to zero. Nothing that was helpful for them to locate and figure out who this baby was. And they never returned the items. So now the only physical evidence that they have to help figuring out who this poor child was is gone. Poof, right? So the psychic saying that it got lost in the mail, like the check did, right? So in 2009, the police the police wanted to exhume her body to run some new tests to see, if they can attempt to identify her through her DNA, because they had skin cells. They did have blood, even though she was drained, she still had blood. They didn't have her hair on her head, but of course she had small hairs, and they did not have saliva, but they had two of the 4 of the 3 particles of DNA, to where they can go ahead and locate where she is from, right? Like they can locate your location just by getting your DNA. So that's what they did. But in 2009, when they went to go look for her, they found out that she was not where they said she was. So now it's like, what did we do with the body? We don't have the shirt, don't have the rope. Where's the body? So what they do, which sucks that they don't have a rope, because they could have used the rope right now and tested it for DNA and found skin cells, blood, hair, and maybe even saliva on the rope. But they gave it to somebody. Careless. You gave your evidence to a psychic medium from the television, and they took it. So careless. So, but okay, she wasn't there, but they were able to find her. So in June 2013, they finally exhumed her remains, and they sent her to the Smithsonian Institution at the University of North Texas. They took the DNA and bone samples and did an isotope testing, which in hopes to determine, to find the region where she came from, right? So with the results came back from that, they said she was from 10 states: Alabama, Arkansas, both the Carolinas, Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, Tennessee, or Texas. So she's from the South. How did she end up in St. Louis? That's the ultimate question. So on February 8th, 2014, after a long 4-hour long reburial process, she was reburied at the Garden of Innocence in Calvary Cemetery, and with the grave identifying marker as Hope. So that's what they're calling her, Baby Hope. So that's why I put in my headline, St. Louis's Jane Doe, but is she really? Because even though she was found in St. Louis, she doesn't belong to St. Louis. She belongs to 10 states, and it's from the South. So if you or anyone in your family went missing back in the 80s, if you can remember having a little sister, they said she had spina bifida, but they're not saying that was part of the cause of her death, but they still don't know the cause of her death. So if you know anyone in your family that went missing back in 83, if you be like, you know what, I used to play with a little girl down the street, and all of a sudden, or I had a sister when I was younger and she was older, but I don't remember, but now it's coming back to me. How do you know what you know unless you say what you know? So say it. Say it. You might be wrong, but you might be right. So say it, And if you have, as I digress, if you know anyone in your family who's disappeared from your life, and you think this might be her, or you feel you might remember something or someone, or at someone at the abandoned building, leaving the abandoned building, or around the abandoned building at the time the body was placed there, please, or around the time the body was placed there and before the two teenagers found the body, please do not hesitate to reach out to St. Louis Police Department at 314-444-5371, or their tip line at 866-371-TIPS. And again, like I always say, if you are one of the ones who don't want to fool with the man, contact me, Santa7production@gmail.com. Put in the subject, Foxxx Files, and I will for sure to get back with you on that one. For sure. Yes, because we want to let you know also before I go, there is a substantial amount for the reward for any information leading to the identification. They just want identification of this baby. So if you again know who this baby is, all you have to do is get your DNA tested. Take your DNA down there, get your DNA tested, see if they can match it to this baby. If they can match it to this baby, then you found your relative. And then now we can move forward on what happened to your relative. And you got a couple dollars in your pocket, forget about your girl. So if you have any idea of what could have happened to this baby, if you know anything about, if you seen this jump rope, it looks like a jump rope from back in the 80s. Have you seen this jump rope? Is your jump rope missing? Did your daddy take your jump rope? You ain't seen your jump rope since your daddy took your jump rope? And is that your jump rope? Right? Oh my goodness, I love it. So that there, ladies and gents, was my beautiful soul, St. Louis Jane Doe. So, dear St. Louis Jane Doe, my sister, this letter is to let you know that you are not forgotten. To let you know that you are not forgotten. Okay? That was that for my beautiful souls. And that actually takes me into my wrap 'em up, cap 'em up, which of course, ladies and gents, until I can get some more information and some more news. Some more information, some more news, which I don't have right now. I'll be talking about Kanisha Dixon. Kanisha Dixon is my wrap 'em up, cap 'em up for today. She is HPD number 05909860-00. This young lady was murdered on May 9th, 2000, in her apartment on the 6400 block of West Forum. She went to open her door, and at the moment that she opened her door, somebody shot her in the stomach, killing her in her living room. When authorities arrived to her house, they found Kenesha laying on the floor in her living room with a gun with her. She was holding on to a gun herself. So when they did the investigation around, no one seen anything, but her family and friends were saying, okay, she was afraid for her life. So who was she afraid for her life from? The roommate who she had just moved in with, because she had just moved into these apartments 2 months before. So this roommate that she had just moved in with tells the authority that was his gun that she had, and because she was afraid. She was afraid of somebody. Who was she afraid of? So if you know anything about what could have happened to Miss Young Kenesha, please don't hesitate to reach out to the Houston Police Department, 713-308-3618, or their Crime Stoppers at 713-222-TIPS. Or again, reach out to me, Santy7Production at gmail.com, for the subject Foxxx Files, and I will for sure get back with you. Right? All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is the conclusion of our show today. Oh, my nose is sweating. My goodness. I thank you so much for tuning in and staying as long as you did. You stayed the whole day, the whole episode. I truly appreciate it. You already know what you get. You get it, Shimmy. You get it, Shake. No, but for real. Thank you for tuning in to Foxxx Files Cold and Unsolved. I'm Cass, H-Town's Army Brat. You guys take care.